I learned the hard way that silence can be a weapon, especially at Christmas. The night my entire family passed gifts around the living room like I wasn't even there. I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. Then my mother laughed and said, "Oh honey, we didn't get you anything this year." 5 minutes later, a delivery truck stopped right in front of our house and the driver asked for my name. That's when everyone finally looked at me and realized they'd made a mistake they couldn't unwrap their way out of. I'm Gianna, and Christmas had always been complicated in our house, but I didn't know it could be cruel. My parents' place sat at the end of Maple Ridge Drive, the kind of neighborhood where people put matching bows on their mailboxes and pretend it's not, mostly for Instagram. The air smelled like pine, cinnamon, and the kind of expensive candles my mother, Cheryl, bought when she was angry at my father. My older sister Brooke had already parked her SUV in the driveway like she owned the whole property, and my younger brother Eric was inside making jokes too loud and laughing too hard. I was 32, recently single, and still trying to convince myself that moving back to town for a fresh start wasn't the same thing as retreating. I carried my dish in with both hands, baked mac and cheese, extra crispy on top, exactly how my dad liked it. I wanted to arrive with something warm, something that said, "I belong here too." Cheryl barely glanced up when I entered. She was arranging napkins like a museum curator. "Gianna," she said, in the flat tone that somehow always sounded like a question. "You made it." "I made it," I echoed, forcing brightness into my voice. "Merry Christmas, Mom." She kissed the air near my cheek. "Put that on the counter. Dinner's in 20. Brooke appeared from the hallway wearing an emerald dress and a satisfied expression. "There she is," she said, like she'd been waiting for an audience. "I was wondering if you'd bail." "Why would I bail?" I asked. Brooke's eyes flicked down to my sweater, simple, navy, no sparkle. "I don't know. Some people hate family gatherings when they're going through it. Brooke had a way of making my life sound like a messy hallway she didn't want to walk down. Eric jogged in behind her, grabbing a roll from the basket and shoving it in his mouth. "Hey G, you look normal." "That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me," I replied, and he grinned. My dad, Tom, came in from outside with snow on his shoulders and a tired smile. He wrapped me in a hug that actually felt real. Double quotes. "Hey kiddo," he said. "Good to have you home." It was the only moment all night that didn't feel staged. Dinner went the way it always went. Cheryl praising Brooke's job in real estate. Cheryl tolerating Eric's startup ideas. Cheryl asking me if I'd thought about applying somewhere stable. Somewhere stable, like stability was a place you could rent. I worked as a freelance graphic designer. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And after my breakup, it was the one thing I still trusted. Brooke talked about her boyfriend, Dylan, who wasn't there because he was at his parents' cabin and it's complicated. She made complicated sound like a badge. Eric made jokes. Dad kept refilling everyone's water like he could smooth the edges of the night by staying busy. At dessert, Cheryl clinked her spoon against her glass. "Before we do gifts," she said, "I just want to say how proud I am of my children." Brooke straightened. Eric grinned. I swallowed. Cheryl's gaze moved across us like a spotlight. "Brooke, you're building something impressive." "Eric, you're ambitious." Then she looked at me, a beat too long. "Gianna, you've always been creative." I waited for the rest. The lights blinked softly, and the whole room smelled like artificial pine and sugar cookies. Brooke's name was on 3 boxers, each wrapped in expensive paper. Eric had 2. Dad had one big one. Cheryl had a pile because of course she did. I saw no tag with my name, not one. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe mine were in the other room. Maybe they hadn't been put out yet. I waited, smiling politely, while Cheryl handed gifts around like a hostess, passing odd single quotes. "OEUVRES." Brooke tore into her first present, Eisner boots. "Oh my God," she squealed. "Mom, these are the exact ones I wanted." Cheryl beamed. "I know your taste." Eric got a new Dad got a custom grill accessory set. Everyone laughed and thanked and hugged. The kind of holiday performance people post online. I kept waiting for someone to say, "Oh, Gianna's is behind the tree," or "We forgot to bring yours out." Then, Brooke opened another box and pulled out a gold bracelet. She held it up to her wrist, admiring it. "Cheryl," she said, calling our mother by her first name like a friend, "you didn't have to." Cheryl waved her hand. "I wanted to. It's been a big year." A big year. My chest tightened. I hadn't made it a secret that money was tight after the breakup. I'd downsized my apartment, sold some furniture, taken extra projects. I wasn't asking for diamonds. I just wanted a place at the table. When the last present was opened, the room settled into that contented hush, wrapping paper everywhere, the tree still glowing, everyone looking pleased with themselves. Cheryl folded her hands and smiled. Well, she said brightly, that was lovely. I stared at her. Are we done? Brooke's eyes flicked up, confused for half a second, then amused. Eric looked from me to Mom, like he suddenly understood what I was asking but didn't know where to put his face. Cheryl tilted her head. Yes, I felt my voice shake, but I kept it steady. I didn't get anything. The silence that followed was loud. Cheryl's smile didn't fade. That was the worst part. It stayed exactly the same. Oh, honey, she said, with a tiny laugh, like I was being silly. We didn't get you anything this year. My throat went dry. Oh my God, she muttered. Is this really happening? Cheryl's eyes sharpened. Gianna, you're not a child. Gifts aren't the point. But you got everyone else gifts, I said, my voice rising despite myself, including yourself. Cheryl's expression hardened. I did what was appropriate. What's that supposed to mean? Dad finally spoke, his voice low. Cheryl, she cut him off. Tom, don't. I've been thinking, you've made choices. You keep floating. No plan, no stability. You don't contribute the way your siblings do. My stomach dropped. Contribute? I brought food. I helped with your living off uncertainty, she snapped. And if we're being honest, you've always expected us to cushion you. That stung so sharply, I almost laughed, because it wasn't true. I'd been the one who paid for Eric's first business website when he couldn't afford it. I'd designed Brooke's marketing materials when she started selling houses. I'd helped Dad make a portfolio when he wanted to consult after retirement. But apparently those weren't contributions. Mom's right. You're always struggling. It's exhausting. Eric looked uncomfortable. Brooke, come on. Brooke shrugged. What? I stared at them, heat rushing behind my eyes. I wanted to cry, but I wouldn't not here, not in front of Cheryl's perfect tree. So this is, what? I whispered. A lesson. Cheryl lifted her chin. If you want gifts, build a life worth celebrating. Dad stood up so fast his chair scraped. That's enough. But Cheryl didn't flinch. It's not enough. I'm tired of pretending. My heart pounded. I felt like I'd been pushed out of my own family and told to be grateful for the fresh air. And that's when the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Cheryl blinked. Who would? The bell rang again, louder this time, like whoever was outside had somewhere better to be. Dad walked to the door, still tense, and opened it. A man in a Navy delivery uniform stood on the porch, holding a clipboard. Behind him, a large truck idled at the curb, its headlights cutting through the snow. Delivery for Gianna DeLuca, the driver said, reading the name clearly. Need a signature. My name. My entire body went cold, then hot. Brooke's head snapped toward me. What is that? Cheryl stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Gianna, what did you do? I swallowed. My hands shook as I stood. I think it's for me. The driver smiled politely. Big one, we'll bring it up. Then 2 more workers climbed out of the truck and went to the back, lowering a ramp. Something large was inside, covered in protective wrap. The whole living room crowded toward the windows, like the tree had moved outside. Eric squinted. Is that furniture? Brooke scoffed. Who's sending you furniture? Cheryl's voice was tight. Gianna, is this some kind of stunt? I didn't answer, because I couldn't. My mind raced. 3 weeks earlier, I'd gotten an email from a law office I didn't recognize. It was addressed to me and Brooke, and it mentioned the name of my grandmother, Nona Rosa. Nona had raised us half the time. She'd taught me to cook, to sew buttons back on, to breathe through panic. She was the only one who ever hugged me without checking if my sweater was wrinkled first. Nona had passed away in the spring. Cheryl had handled everything, insisting it would be simpler if she managed the estate. I'd been grieving too hard to fight, but that email had been different. It was formal. It was specific. So I called the law office, and then I found out Cheryl had never told me the truth. Nona Rosa had left something behind, something meant for me. Cheryl had been hoping I'd never learn. The delivery workers rolled the object up the walkway and into the house with careful steps. They maneuvered it past the doorframe, past the rug Cheryl loved, and into the living room like it belonged there. It was a large wooden chest, antique, heavy, with carved floral patterns and a brass lock. Even under the wrap, I recognized it immediately. Nona's hope chest. Got my breath caught. Cheryl's face drained of color so fast it looked like someone turned down her brightness. "No," she whispered. The driver looked at me. "Where do you want it?" I barely managed. "Right here." They set it down beside the tree. In the silence, the chest felt louder than any argument, like it was carrying a voice that couldn't be ignored. The driver handed me the clipboard. "Sign here." My hand trembled as I signed. The ink looked too dark against the paper. When the workers left, the door closed, and we were alone with the chest. Brooke stepped forward, eyes greedy. "What's inside?" Cheryl snapped. "Don't touch it." That was when I knew. Cheryl already knew what it was. She already knew what it meant. Dad looked between us. "Cheryl, what is this?" Cheryl's mouth opened, then shut. So I spoke, my voice quiet but steady. "Nona left it to me." Brooke scoffed. "No, she didn't." I met her eyes. "Yes, she did. And she left something else too." Eric frowned. "Gianna." I turned toward Dad. "Nona's lawyer contacted me. Apparently, the will was updated 2 years ago." Cheryl's eyes flashed. "That's private." "Not when you hit it," I said, my voice sharper now. Dad's face tightened. "Cheryl, you said everything was handled. You said there was nothing." "I said what I needed to say," she hissed. My chest burned. "You told me Nona didn't leave anything. You told me she loved us equally, and there was no point talking about it." Cheryl's voice rose, because it would have caused drama. I laughed once. Bitter drama, like humiliating me in front of everyone. Brooke crossed her arms. "I'm done trying." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small key on a ribbon one the lawyer mailed to me after verifying my identity. Cheryl's eyes widened. "Gianna, don't." "I'm going to," I said simply. I knelt, slid the key into the brass lock, and turned it. The click sounded like a verdict. When I lifted the lid, the scent of cedar drifted up warm and familiar, like Nona's house. Inside were neatly folded linens, old photos, a small velvet pouch. "Kiddo." But every word landed like a hand on my shoulder. Nona wrote about seeing me get overlooked, about how some people only value what they can show off. She wrote that I had always been the one who noticed who was left out, that I had always been the one who stayed. Then the last lines made my breath stop. "I am leaving you the house on Willow Lane, paid in full. It is yours, Gia. A safe place that no one can take from you." A sound left Cheryl's throat, half gasp, half choke. Brooke's eyes went wide. "What?" Eric whispered. "Nona left you a house," Cheryl snapped. "That's not true." I pulled out the second document, tucked beneath the letter official stamped, signed. "It is," I said, voice shaking now. "And you knew." Dad turned on Cheryl. "You knew she left Gianna a house." Cheryl's face twisted. "It was supposed to stay in the family." "It is in the family," I said, tears finally spilling. "I'm in the family. Even if you forget that." Brooke stepped forward, frantic. "Gianna, come on, we can talk about this like adults." I laughed through tears. "Like adults? You just watched me get excluded and said it was exhausting." Brooke's cheeks reddened. "Mom was making a point." "A point," I repeated, tasting the word like poison. "You wanted to punish me for not being like you." Eric looked sick. "Mom, why would you hide that?" Cheryl's voice sharpened, desperate now. "Because Gianna would waste it. She'd sell it. I snapped. "You mean you would have taken it?" Silence. Dad's jaw clenched. "Cheryl, she didn't deny it. She couldn't. And that was the real betrayal, not the missing gift, not the humiliation, but the fact that my mother had tried to erase my inheritance like it was a typo." I wiped my face and stood, holding Nona's letter like it was proof that I was real. "I'm not asking for approval anymore," I said quietly. "I'm not begging to be treated like I matter." Cheryl's eyes were sharp with anger, but underneath was something else, fear. "Gianna," she said, "don't do anything rash." I looked at the pile of gifts, the glittering tree, the perfect living room staged like a catalog. Then I looked at the chest, solid and honest. "I'm doing something overdue," I said. "I'm leaving." Brooke's voice softened suddenly. "Fake sweet. You can't just walk out on Christmas." I met her gaze. "Watch me." Dad stepped forward. "Where will you go?" I swallowed. "Willow Lane." his eyes filled with something like pride and heartbreak. Your Nona, she loved you. I know, I whispered. Cheryl tried one last time, voice tight. You're tearing this family apart. I shook my head. No, you did. I'm just refusing to hold it together with my own hands anymore. I closed the chest gently, like tucking Nona's memory back into place, and I lifted the velvet pouch. Inside was a small gold necklace, a simple pendant shaped like a tiny heart. Nona single quotes is. I slipped it on right there, under Cheryl's perfect Christmas lights. Then I grabbed my coat, opened the front door, and stepped into the cold air like it was freedom. The house on Willow Lane wasn't huge. It was older, with creaky floors and a porch that needed repainting. But when I unlocked the door and walked in, it felt like breathing for the first time in months. The next few weeks were hard. Cheryl called twice, once to accuse me of stealing, once to say she wanted to talk. Brooke texted paragraphs about fairness, about family, about how I should share, because it was what Nona would have wanted. Eric sent a single message. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have stood up for you. Dad came by one afternoon with a toolbox and a quiet sadness. I should have seen it, he said, tightening a loose hinge on my kitchen cabinet. I'm sorry, kiddo. I nodded. I know you tried. He looked at me. What will you do now? I glanced around at the little house, my house, sunlight on the worn hardwood, dust dancing in the air. I'm going to build, I said, something worth celebrating, for me. And that became my revenge, not a dramatic confrontation, not a lawsuit, not a public humiliation. My revenge was peace. I renovated slowly, carefully, choosing colors I loved, not ones that matched Cheryl's taste. I set up a small home studio and took bigger clients. I hosted friends for dinner and laughed without fear of being judged. I started volunteering at a community center, teaching teen girls basic design skills, watching them light up when they realized their ideas mattered. I stopped waiting for my family to make room for me. I made my own. By the next Christmas, I didn't go back to Maple Ridge Drive. I stayed on Willow Lane, baked mac and cheese for my neighbors, hung simple lights on my porch, and wore Nona's necklace like armor. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the extra chair at the table. I felt like the table itself. If you've ever been overlooked, excluded, or made to feel like you had to earn your worth, remember this. The people who minimize you are often afraid of what you'll become once you stop asking permission. If this story hit you somewhere personal, tap like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose yourself over family expectations? Your story might help someone else feel less alone.